Hey guys, it's Mike here, and today I'm going to be bringing you another LSC Q&A over here on Laughingstock Cinema, and this is going to be my second LSC Q&A, in which I'm going to be answering your subscriber questions about movies and TV shows. So, without further ado, let's get into answering some of these questions. Now, the first one is, what if Spider-Man had ki? Could he make his web stronger? I would think that it could stand to reason that he could use his ki to imbue his webs and other things with energy in order for them to become possibly stronger. You know, Spider-Man is an interesting case because not only is he a human, but he also has the spider-like traits, you know, and we've even seen in the past, similar to Goku, that Spider-Man will sometimes transform into the man spider, depending upon how active his mutation is, you know. So, you know, I wonder just what he could do with ki if he had that ability, you know, and maybe he could use that man spider kind of like the Ozaru or something and make himself stronger. But, you know, I think that he'd be doing a little bit more than slinging webs. You know, he'd probably be flying around shooting people with blasts, you know, and maybe even fighting some of the more powerful villains, because if he could use ki, Doc Ock and Green Goblin probably wouldn't be able to stand much of a chance against him. What are your thoughts on comic book movies before the MCU and DC Extended Universe? Do they completely stink, or some of them are good? Well, this is a very interesting question, and largely because there's a big debate about if any of the superhero movies before, you know, the MCU and the DCEU are really up to snuff with a lot of the big movies from the MCU. And yeah, there's a lot of them that definitely weren't very good. You know, you could say the theatrical cut of Daredevil wasn't very good. You could say that, you know, some of the Superman sequels are pretty bad, some of the Batman sequels too. But there was also some really good comic book based movies that came out that didn't really conform to the kind of formula and much of what the cinematic universes are doing now. Like, obviously Batman was great, Superman was great, X-Men 1 and 2 were great, Watchmen I think is a really underrated movie and is really great in a lot of ways. You know, a lot of people really like V for Vendetta, although, you know, honestly I think that the comic is significantly superior to the movie adaptation. You know, that's funny that a lot of people will say that V for Vendetta is really good, whereas the Watchmen movie isn't, but I think it's the complete opposite. And there's even things like Road to Perdition, Sin City, Hellboy, a lot of movies like that that I think are really good that, you know, came before these two. And a lot of people don't really like the DCEU movies, although I do like Man of Steel and Wonder Woman, and I don't really think that Suicide Squad was as bad as a lot of other people say, but, you know, hopefully they'll be able to continue to get better with movies like Aquaman and Shazam. And I really hope the Wonder Woman sequel will be good as well. Is TMNT 1990 live action the most underrated comic book based movie of all time? That's another good example. I really like that movie. Honestly, I really like the second one too, which I guess is a childhood guilty pleasure, you could say. But, you know, for me, I really like them. And actually, I recently rewatched TMNT and I still like the movies. So I don't know if I would say it's the most underrated, because I feel like there's even some recent comic book movies that aren't very well received by the fan bases that probably are better than many people are saying, but at the same time, it's definitely one of them, I would say, in today's current climate. Would you make a breakdown video explaining the pros and cons of Avengers Infinity War movie, like, for example, had a power scale made no sense? Well, I did a review of the movie that you can check out on LSC, but I definitely want to start doing more MCU-related videos in the future, so maybe I'll do something on the power scaling, why not? I don't know if you've read the EU of Star Wars, but why does it shit all over everything that Disney has done? Do you think that they should have adapted comics like Dark Empire or games like The Old Republic to movies instead of failing to be creative and making Star Wars just another series now? Yeah, I've definitely read a few things here and there, some of the books as well as the comics, and obviously played some of the video games, so there's definitely a lot of stories that I've gathered from them that I feel like are better than what they're doing in the current movies right now, especially with Rogue One, The Last Jedi, and Solo. You know, I still like Force Awakens, but everything after that was, you know, a downhill slide. So I would really like to see an Old Republic movie, but, you know, some of those Star Wars story movies that, you know, supposedly have been put on hold, but now I'm hearing some things that they might not all have been. I would like to see those. You know, one of the characters I feel like has the most potential for a movie would have to be Yoda, because Yoda was 900 years old, so the guy has so much history that hasn't even been explored from long before Anakin was even born and the Skywalker saga kicked off. So even doing a movie exploring his backstory, I think, would be really cool. Favorite sitcom? Honestly, I'm just not really a big fan of sitcoms. I never really have been. I've liked a couple here and there, like, I think I liked some of Frasier from what I saw, and I liked the Drew Carey Show, but that's pretty much it. Favorite movie genre? Probably science fiction. I really like science fiction settings. I like how they explore various concepts. I've always had a fascination with science, so a lot of those movies are very interesting to me. You know, Blade Runner, Star Wars, Star Trek. There's so many different science fiction series that I'm a big fan of, but I also really like fantasy, crime dramas, and of course action is a big genre that, you know, I'm sure most people can get behind. Favorite horror movie? Probably either the original Halloween or Alien. Are you hyped for Aquaman? I'm going in cautiously optimistic. I really hope it's good. I've seen some cool stuff from behind the scenes, some cool first looks, like Black Manta's helmet, for example, looks good. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the casting of Jason Momoa at first, you know, I can definitely see them going for more of a Timverse Aquaman with the hook hand, basically, although I'm not sure if we're going to really get to see that in the movies, but, you know, he's going for more of the badass warrior Aquaman as opposed to the original Aquaman, and, you know, this could be really cool. It's being directed by James Wan, who's really good at what he does, so it could be like another really good step in the right direction for the DCEU, but I'm not really going to get my hopes up or my expectations super high until I actually see the movie. Does a villain need to be sympathetic to be interesting? I guess they don't need to be, but it depends on your definition of interesting. You know, if you really like the concept and the history behind the character and the lore, then yeah, like Frieza, for example, is a character that isn't incredibly sympathetic in Dragon Ball Z, but when it comes down to it, you know, you could still really find him very interesting because of his shared lore with the main character and all these other side characters, and the same thing could be said for a lot of really interesting villains. So I don't think that it's 100% necessary for them to be sympathetic, but a lot of the times I feel like it makes a greater connection with the audience for them to be someone that we can actually understand their motivations or sympathize with how they arrived at their position. You know, like Martin Scorsese said, villains or bad guys are just us under different circumstances. So that's certainly something I like seeing conveyed in movies and TV shows. What if Deadpool was in Dragon Ball Z? He'd be a really interesting character. I'm not too sure if he would actually learn how to use ki, even though, you know, he would be very helpful if he did. You know, basically his regeneration and immortality are at a level that, aside from a few things like the necklace and Deadpool 2, it'd be really hard to stop this guy from continually coming back. You know, maybe he could even be a Mr. Satan kind of character to where he could basically just continue to crack jokes while he's effortlessly destroyed by the villain, and then he just keeps coming back and back and back while breaking the fourth wall. I mean, Dragon Ball broke the fourth wall sometimes. Gonna hit you with a hard one. What is your favorite scene in Terminator 2? Well, that would definitely have to be the Cyberdyne sequence in the movie, especially the minigun scene, which I've always loved it when Arnold kicks the desk right through the window, and then everyone's like, that's a damn minigun! Everyone's running for their lives while he's shooting all of their cars up and driving them back, and then of course at the very end you have the casualties 0.0, although I wonder what the point is for. Like, what if he, like, blasted somebody half to death? Would it count as a 0.5, you know? But I love that whole Cyberdyne sequence. It's really great. Have you seen any Full Metal Alchemist movies? Yeah, I saw Conqueror of Shambhala, but I didn't see the Brotherhood one. Have you seen any Pokemon movies? Yeah, I feel like I at one point had seen most of them, but they make so many of them now, I completely lost track of where I am. Have you seen any sitcoms on Nickelodeon or E4? When I was a kid, I used to watch some of the shows on Nickelodeon, like Drake and Josh was one I really liked, for example. I don't think I've ever seen anything on E4, so no, not really. Would you prefer the Hulk or Bruce Banner being in control for most of their screen time? And do you like the increased control Banner has shown in triggering his transformation in the movies? Well, yeah, in the comics there is a character named Professor Hulk, which is basically when Bruce Banner and the Hulk fuse consciousnesses together, and basically, you know, Bruce Banner, as it were, is in complete control over the Hulk. You know, Hulk is a walking, talking person, much like he was in Thor Ragnarok, in which he is, you know, able to communicate with people. You know, he identifies himself as Hulk and Banner in some incarnations, so I think that's a direction they're moving in, and I think it would be really cool depending upon how well it's done. What movie would you mix with Predator? I wouldn't mind seeing Graboids eating predators in the Wild West setting, of course Graboids being from Tremors. That would certainly be interesting. I think it'd be cool to see the Predators come back in time to even earlier settings, because we keep seeing like the present or the near future, so why not have Predators go back in time to like the Middle Ages or like ancient feudal Japan or, you know, something like that. I think that'd be really awesome. And yeah, mixing movies with the Predator, obviously Alien I thought was cool, but never really done well in execution. I mean, maybe you can even drop him in like the Friday the 13th franchise and have like Predators trying to like abduct Jason and kill him, but he just keeps surviving all of their laser blasts and everything. Just go full on crazy with it. Why not? Give Jason something else to do. Is Thor: The Dark World underrated? Well, a lot of people consider it to be the worst MCU movie, which I'm not too sure I would agree with that, so in many ways, yeah. There's a lot of aspects of Thor: The Dark World I actually like. Like, I don't think it's really anywhere near as bad as some people make it out to be. Sure, like Malekith isn't really the best developed villain. You know, Natalie Portman and Kat Dennings are incredibly annoying in the movies, so is Professor Selvig. Of course, this is a carryover from the first movie, but in many ways they're even more annoying. But I like the dynamic between Thor and Loki. You know, I like the scene after Thor's mother is killed when they're all, you know, doing the funeral. You know, I like the fact that they moved in more of a fantastical direction, like with the elves, and I like the fact that they went to other realms. You know, there's definitely some positive things in that movie, you know, some interesting concepts. So I feel like in some ways, yeah, it is underrated. Why is Disney killing everyone at the box office? Because they know how to play the game better than pretty much anyone at this point. With Marvel, with Star Wars, not as much, but, you know, like Pixar, animated movies, like Disney knows what they're doing. Have you seen a series of unfortunate events on Netflix? If yes, what are your thoughts? I haven't yet. I saw the original movie, which I don't think I was really the biggest fan of. I never read the novels, so it's not really something I have a lot of attachment to, but, you know, I've heard the show is good, so I might have to check it out at some point. Have you heard there's going to be a Sonic movie in 2019? No, I'm not really a big Sonic follower. I used to play the games, and I liked some of the shows when I was a kid, but that's pretty much it. Maybe if it's good, I'll look into checking it out, but it's not really on my radar right now. What are your thoughts on the movie The Grey, directed by Joe Carnahan? I remember going into it expecting an action survival thriller, but it delivered on its emotional concepts and remains my favorite film to date. I know some people dislike the movie for its ambiguous ending, but what are your thoughts? I think it's pretty good. You know, I think that a lot of people went into it not expecting what they got, and of course the trailers made it seem like Liam Neeson is just gonna be fighting wolves in the middle of like the Arctic basically for a long period of time, but you know, for me, I thought it was pretty good. It definitely subverted my expectations, and it went a lot darker than I expected. You know, there's scenes when Liam Neeson is screaming, you know, please help me, you know, just help me survive this, but ultimately the entire movie is about death, and I guess accepting death and just seeing that death will eventually come. And the movie definitely did have an ambiguous ending, especially like after the credits, but but ultimately I feel like the movie is basically about accepting death and death itself. So I think that if you go into the movie with that in mind, it's a movie that you could probably enjoy. You know, it's a good movie overall, so it's worth checking out. What's your favorite TV show and why is it your favorite? Well, as far as live action goes, maybe something like Breaking Bad, just because of how well the story is told, how great the tension is throughout, you know, like the transformation of Walter White from Mr. Chips to Scarface, basically, as Vince Gilligan has said in the past. You know, it's a really great show that I've seen many times through, so at this moment, I'd probably say it's probably still my favorite live action TV show, although there are shows that I'm really still needing to get into at this point, and there's a lot of great shows on Netflix right now, so I definitely would recommend Breaking Bad, though, and I might discuss it more in videos in the future. Why did Odin have the gauntlet? Well, he didn't have the real gauntlet, he instead had a fake gauntlet, and the only reason I feel like they even felt the need to justify that with a scene in which Hela says that it's a fake is because of the fact that fans read a little bit too much into an Easter egg, like, you know, maybe at some point it was intended to be in Odin's vault and that's where Thanos would get it from and we'd have like a whole conflict on Asgard, but I feel like at the same time it was probably just like a fun Easter egg, and then people kept speculating it to the point where Kevin Feige and the MCU basically had to acknowledge it. So he didn't have the real gauntlet, it was fake, as Hela said. What are you looking in a movie? Which I guess, what do I look for? Specified like a good story or pretty visuals, etc. Well, obviously I like the whole package. You know, I like to have a really well-crafted story with interesting characters who get developed, as well as a great looking movie with great cinematography, lighting, direction. You know, there's a lot to look for. Obviously a score. Overall, yeah, the thing I'm looking for most is good direction, good screenwriting, and, you know, obviously something like good editing goes a long way, because I've worked on movies, you know, I've edited for a very long period of time, so when I watch a movie, I don't really look at it necessarily just as a movie or a story being told to me. I look at it also as the amalgamation of what went into it in the production. But if you can give me a well-crafted story with strong characters and a good direction, and a strong continuity, then chances are I'm gonna like it. But it's very case by case. And finally, what's your favorite movie and TV show? I already talked about Breaking Bad, and my favorite movie, of course, is Terminator II: Judgment Day. But alright guys, this has been another LSC Q&A, which I'm doing over here on Laughingstock Cinema. Thank you guys for your questions, I hope you enjoyed, and if you're new to the channel, then make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you can see all of my content right away when it comes out, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe, enable those damn notifications.